If you are naturally tired at night and excited in the morning, then you haven't found something meaningful to work on. That's a quote from Mark Manson, and it summarizes what we're going to talk about in the video quite well. So let me show you exactly what you need to do if you want to take your energy levels to the moon. Because I'm a chemical engineer, I naturally think in systems. So what's coming into a system and what's going out of a system. If you imagine this battery here is your energy levels, there's really only two things going on. You have things that are charging the battery, and then you have things that are discharging the battery. Everything you do can be classified into one or two categories. They are either things that are draining you of energy, or the things that are giving you energy. And I know this sounds incredibly obvious, right? If you want to have more energy, you need to do less of the things that are draining you of energy, and you need to do more of the things that are giving you energy. But there's a problem with this. And that problem is this line down here. So things that give us energy, we often perceive them as things that require energy from the battery. So if you don't have energy, you're not going to want to actually do the things that give you energy. And so you're caught in this loop. So the entire point of this video is to convince you that if you build a meaningful project, something that you care really deeply about, you're going to naturally want to do the things that give you energy. And that's why I think that the worst mistake that nearly everyone makes when trying to have more energy is that they address the low mood and low energy directly before they really understood the problem. Because low mood and low energy, as I will show you, is actually a symptom of a bigger problem. And let me show you exactly what I mean. So imagine that you had this snake in the garden. If you were to cut the snake at the tail here, it wouldn't do you very much good because you still have the rest of the snake to worry about. Instead, what you want to do is cut it at the head. And that's exactly how I see low energy. I see it as the end result or the tail of the snake. So if we're really interested in solving the problem for good, we have to get as close as what we can to the head of the snake. All right, so let's actually think about this. When we move up the snake, what are some questions that we can ask ourselves? Well, the first one is if we have low energy, we have to ask, okay, why do we have low energy? So there's a concept that I call machine maintenance. It's basically what you have to do in order to maintain a high level of performance. So you can think about this machine maintenance list as kind of like a checklist that you would see in an instruction manual for yourself. So if you were having low mood and low energy, you need to ask yourself, am I sleeping well? Am I properly hydrated? Have I been eating nutritious foods? Am I exercising regularly? Am I getting enough sunlight? When was the last time I saw my friends and family? Am I learning anything new? Am I engaging in anything creative? Because all of these things have a significant impact on how you feel and your overall well-being. I would imagine if you're suffering from low mood and low energy, then some of these things, if not most of these things, you have been neglecting. Now, I'm not saying this to be judgmental. I'm saying this because it's true. I honestly would find it hard to believe that if you were doing these things consistently on a regular basis, then you wouldn't feel pretty fucking good. So the question becomes, why aren't you doing these things? And to answer that, we have to move up the snake. If we're going to be completely honest with ourselves, it's probably some variation of I don't have the energy or I don't feel like it. And so you can see how you get yourself into this loop pattern. It's kind of like the snake is eating its own tail. So what do? Well, nearly all the self-improvement and all self-care advice comes down to the simple fact that you have to do the things that you don't want to do. In other words, you need willpower and you need discipline. But we all know that willpower and by extension discipline doesn't work in the long term because there's something called ego depletion. You can think about ego depletion as your bank account. Every time you have to exercise discipline and willpower, a large sum of money gets withdrawn from your bank account. Eventually, you run out of money, and eventually, you get into debt and you start making some pretty bad decisions. Basically, the point that I'm trying to get across here is most people use discipline as a quick fix for their problems. So they think, shit, I have low mood and low energy. I need to get my shit together. I need to be disciplined. I need to do all these things, and then I will have energy. And yeah, you will. But is that actually going to be long-lasting change for you? Or are you going to go a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, and then fall back into the same patterns of behavior and the same rut that you pulled yourself out of? Because that's the story for most people. Most people don't actually make changes that are sustainable and are long-lasting. So the question we then have to ask ourselves is, Why is it so easy for me to do the things that are bad for me and so hard to do the things that are actually good for me? And when we answer that, we get to a more honest answer further up the snake. And if we're going to be completely honest with ourselves, it's probably because you don't actually want to be at your best. And no, I'm not saying this to be some toxic motherfucker. I'm saying this because, again, I believe it to be true. And I'll show you why. Hopefully you're not taking this as some personal attack because that's not my intention at all. I want to get as close to the head of the snake so we can chop it off and actually solve problems in our lives. I think you would agree that doing the machine maintenance is taking care of yourself. And that leads us into the problem. You don't need to take care of yourself. Because if you did need to, you would. I know this to be 100% true because you do things every single day that you don't want to, but still do because you need to. You will go to a job that you don't like so you can earn money to survive because you need to. You will stay up all night to submit that assignment because you need to. You will wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to catch that early flight because you need to. But you don't, and this is the crucial part, you don't need to take care of yourself. Like, there's still an option there. In the other cases, you don't have the option. Here's another way to illustrate this. So did you know if you went to the doctor and he gave you some antibiotics for your sickness, the chance that you will actually complete that course of antibiotics is around about 30%. But if your dog got sick and they had antibiotics, the chance that your dog will complete that course of antibiotics is 95%. You take way better care of your dog than you do for yourself. And it's pretty simple, right? Your dog can't do that themselves. Your dog needs you to do it. You're in service of your dog, but you don't need to be in service of yourself. So am I saying that the answer is to just love yourself more? No, I'm not. Fuck that. Because I think this whole self-care, self-love is a bunch of bullshit. The answer is not self-love because did you know, and this is fucking crazy, narcissists and people suffering from severe depression have the same problem. When someone is hyper depressed, they are constantly thinking about themselves. I'm a loser, I'm pathetic. When someone is narcissistic, they're constantly thinking about themselves. I'm the best, I'm better than everyone else. Quote from Dr. K, Healthy Gamer. In both instances, it's all about me, and it makes you fucking miserable, man. This is one of the biggest shortcomings of most mental health advice nowadays. They get you to focus more on yourself, not less. And one of the really cool things that I learned from Dr. K is what happens when you meditate. So the reason why meditation is prescribed as a treatment to depressed people is that it turns off the area of the brain that allows you to think about yourself. The more you ruminate on yourself, the more negative thoughts you have, the worse you feel, and the less energy you have. And then to cap it off, you have less energy, so you're less likely to do the machine maintenance that will give you more energy. So now we can move up to the head of the snake and to actually address a core problem here. I think this is the highest leverage thing that you can do. Build a project that sets the standard. And I'll give you an example. At my old engineering job, one of my co-workers and now my friend is a bit of a party boy. So he'll turn up to work some mornings being hungover, tired, underslept, and would perform way below what he was capable of. He still did his work and he still did a pretty good job of it too, and that's exactly the point. We were both unengaged with what we were doing. The job didn't demand us to be at our best, so it didn't matter if he went out the night before, got drunk, had fun, he could come to work the next day and be paid to recover. If you can get away with that, why wouldn't you? And this is one of the key things that I want you guys to understand. Mistakes are only mistakes when they contrast against your goals. You will always fall to the minimum standard that you can get away with. But if you build a project that you love, that feels like play, and sets the standard high, then you will be at your best. I know you will. And your identity will shift to that of someone who does take care of themselves. And at that point, doing hard things that are good for you, like the machine maintenance, become automatic. And I know they sound familiar, But a project is not the same as a goal. You can think about a goal as the destination that you want to go to, but your project is the vehicle that gets you there. I know this is going to sound quite strange, but the best projects that you'll ever build feel like they happen to you rather than a goal that you intentionally set. We talked about how this happens extensively in last week's video, so go watch that one after this one if you haven't seen it already. That video will give you a better picture of that side of the project building process. But what we're going to focus on today is a process of self-discovery so that you can find the thing that feels like play and build a project from it. So before we get into the 3 steps that I'm going to show you to do the self-discovery process, have a look at this. There was a quote from Einstein that said, if he had 1 hour to solve a problem, he'll spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes on the solution. That's pretty much what we did here. We started with a core problem that was low energy at the tail of the snake, and we thought about the problem more and more until we came to the highest leverage solution that we can come up with. And that's building a project that sets the standard, because it takes our focus away from ourselves, which is internal, and external to something that we want to achieve. A project can literally be anything. So the first thing we have to do is figure out what project do we want to build that's going to solve the problems that we have, which is actually a pretty tough question. And that brings us to step 1. Okay, so earlier this year, I was suffering quite badly from low mood and low energy. I would come home from work in the afternoons and I would not even have the energy to do the things that I would normally love to do, like going to the gym, going for walks, and working on these ideas. Instead, all I wanted to do was plop myself on the couch in my 1-bedroom apartment alone and scroll on my phone into the infinite void. And that's something that that scrolling does an excellent job of. It takes the mind off the mind, and we use it as an anesthesia to numb ourselves from the discomforts in our life. That's exactly what I was doing. But noticing that I was struggling, I made the decision to reduce the intensity of my workouts and prioritize meditation and long walks. Intentionally carving out time gave my mind the opportunity to think, wonder, reflect, and really observe what was happening. And through that introspection process, the cause became abundantly clear. My engineering job was sucking the life out of me. It was obvious that the situation wasn't going to improve, and I became really aware of how much it was negatively affecting the other projects that I have that I care deeply about. So at that point, I had to make a decision, and that was to leave the job. As it turns out, low energy wasn't even the problem. The environment was. Because once I got out of the environment, my low mood started to improve, and I started to get my energy back. You want to observe yourself like you're a third person? So personally, I like to prioritize long walks and meditation as the primary way to chew on the problems in my life. And that nearly always gives me a clear answer about what I should do. And if you're struggling to make sense of all the stuff that you're reflecting on, what you need to do is to expose yourself to new ideas. In step 2, you don't want to consume content, but instead you want to research for information. You need ideas to understand what you're working with, because you can't understand the system that you're in unless you have the information required to understand it. So imagine if I didn't have any understanding about work, agency, fulfillment, happiness, energy, and emotions, I wouldn't perceive what was going on as a problem. Instead, I would just think, this is the way it is. This is the way work is, and I would have to continue pushing forward miserable. And even if I did change jobs, I wouldn't have the understanding required in order to produce a different outcome. So you need to flood your mind with ideas. And we live in an environment where information is so abundant, it's really easy to overload yourself with information. So the best thing that you can do is to lean into your curiosity. You don't need to read or listen to anything that anyone tells you. Only follow your curiosity, because curiosity is the best compass you'll ever have. Once you set the intention to solve a particular pain point, your brain will automatically start to orientate itself to look for information relevant to that pain point. Your primary goal as you follow your curiosity and research for ideas is to understand yourself and the world around you better, because that will allow you to collect firepower to solve the problems in your life and find unique solutions for them. And then when you have sufficient firepower, you can move on to step 3. The worst thing that you can do is commit yourself to a narrowly defined goal early on. Instead, you want to experiment so that you can find the right constraints so that you know that you're building the right project for you. So let's say, for example, your physical appearance was the main cause of your low mood and low energy. Every time you looked into the mirror, you were absolutely disgusted with what you saw. Your immediate reaction would be, I need to get my ass into the gym because that's what everyone says. And yeah, that's fine, go try the gym, but give yourself permission to quit if you're not enjoying yourself. You didn't fail, you gathered information so you can add it to the constraints. As you continue to experiment, you keep getting information on you. So you might even find out that anything more than 4 hours a week of dedicated exercise becomes unsustainable and you don't want to do that. So you can add that to your constraints. And so your constraints begin to look like, I want to get into excellent shape in no more than 4 hours per week without going to the gym. And this allows you to keep experimenting so that you find your unique solution for you. Eventually, you will find something that you really enjoy doing. And as you continue to invest time, effort, and in some cases, money into this thing, it becomes a passion of yours. And that passion eventually becomes a project that solves that particular pain point or gets you to the goal that you want to achieve. When you are experiencing low mood and low energy, don't try to fix the low mood and low energy directly because you'll make your project into a chore. And if it feels like a chore, you're not going to want to stick to it. The only reason why you do your chores is because you don't want to live in a messy and filthy house. So find the thing that feels like play that makes you want to do your chores, the machine maintenance, so that your low energy and low mood follows and improves. In other words, build a project that sets the standard. If you have any questions about any of this, I would love to hear from you, so leave a comment if you have one. If you like these ideas, make sure you go to my Substack and sign up for the newsletter there because I send these ideas out every week ahead of the videos, so you'll get it directly to your inbox. As always, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.